Good evening. This is the Linux SIG of the Chicago Computer Society, March 22nd, 2022. We had a problem with the scheduling originally in the message that just didn't disappeared. So I had to create an emergency link and I sent it out 3 times. Generally, I'm wanting to start out with tips and tricks that people have learned on Linux that others might benefit from. Gee, don't everybody start at the same time?
The other day I was trying to do an update on the on my Linux Zoom because it said that wasn't up to date, and yet when I tried to run that, it just wouldn't go. It wouldn't update it.
I've had occasional problem in the past myself, and it varies as to cause. But sometimes what you can do is bring up Zoom. If you have a free account, you log into the free account, you can update it directly from there. At least you can on Windows. I'm not sure on Linux.
Okay, because I wasn't signed in.
Yeah, you have to sign in if you just bring up Zoom by itself. Uh, but now you're on the Linux machine right now, so you should be able to check and see if there's an update that you can do
Yeah, let
on
me
it.
do that.
Now, I had in the past month, roughly, uh, an issue that I finally figured out what it was. Uh, Something that has been plaguing me for about 8 months off and on, and I finally got tired of it, so I had to try and figure it out. It's an in-house networking situation. I use both Wi-Fi and Ethernet. In fact, the machines I'm on right now are all connected by Ethernet. Uh, and I wasn't getting the speeds I should get. Worst of all, I was not getting nothing or next to nothing on upload speed. And normally I am several hundred up to 500 megabytes per second on download, and usually in the 50s on upload. So I had to try and figure out what the hell was going on. I found out by putting in a desktop a Wi-Fi adapter, and it said things were a whole lot better. I had good, at least by comparison, good upload speed, uh, as good or better download speeds. So what the hell's the problem? Well, I probably had the problem for a long time since I've gone up to high-speed internet years back and never knew it, never realized it because it wasn't a bigger issue that it is now with Zoom. Zoom in particular is one heck of a resource hog to begin with, and then uploading the videos to an account to transfer to Sanford to put on the YouTube channel was a big issue. So what the heck was it? Turned out to be one of my internal routers, and it's strictly a router. This here is the backside of another old router. It's normal looking back end. This port here is where you would plug in an Ethernet cable from the primary modem router that I get my service through. And these here, this is called an Ethernet switch. Well, Ethernet switches operate at T10, T100, T1000, or 10 megabytes per second, 100 megabytes per second, or 1,000 or a gigabyte per second. Well, there's one little issue with that. That older internal router was nothing but a T10, T100, and that's why I wasn't getting all the throughput. So when I figured that out and switched the switch to one that has T1000 rating, all my problems disappeared on that. So
Tim, I also noted when I upgraded some stuff lately that it needed a Cat 6 as opposed to a Cat 5 wiring.
be careful. There are multiple wires. You can use a Cat 6, yes, but you can also use a Cat 5E as in Edward. That's what I
Well, the
had.
devices came with Cat 6, and I was surprised at the time.
Well, I mean, almost all my wiring in here is a Cat 5E because that's Cat 6 was still pretty new at the time and it was more expensive. I was able to get Cat 5E a lot cheaper, so I went with that. I do have on the switch that I'm on at my feet, one machine has a Cat 6 wire, but it doesn't matter that much. The two are almost synonymous unless you get into, there's a shielded Cat 6 and there's also Cat 7 and shielded Cat 7. And you get into higher speeds, and especially like a hospital setting, they use shielded Ethernet cables. And that's to cut down on interference caused by the transmission going through the wires. It's automatic ground so that the signals inside the cable in the wires stay there and outside interferences don't get in to scramble the signals. But Cat 5E works just as good as 6. Sometimes you can find the 5E still and a little bit cheaper than the 6, but by this point in time, the two are probably almost the same cost, so it probably doesn't matter that much. But 6E, I mean, 6 is the more current version for a gigabit. But now, if you want to go higher, you got to go to Cat 7, and that again depends upon your equipment. You have to have both Wi-Fi that can handle the higher speeds, but most importantly, the insides of this modem here, I mean this router, excuse me, everything is predicated on this switch's speed. So since this was at T100, that means your Wi-Fi can only go as high as 100 megabits per second, even if you got 500 megabit capacity in your service. So you have to understand that router, that old router, became a bottleneck. To get around the bottleneck, you've got to either work around that router or you got to replace it. I have the replacement, I just haven't gotten around to setting it up, and God knows at the moment when the heck that may happen. So I'm bringing that issue forward. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using the Linux machine. What I'm going to be talking about this evening for the, oh, got another. dead body. Good evening, Peter. If you can hear me. Good evening, Peter. You're muted.
Apparently we don't have the echo anymore.
Pardon?
We don't have the echo anymore.
Hmm.
I turned the volume all the way to 0 on my Linux machine.
I
Well,
didn't notice.
A lot of
I
times
didn't
you got to mute it.
Yeah,
Well, that's
I
muted
didn't.
too.
Hello, Peter. You're muted.
By the way, I didn't notice we have the Wayne twins. That's a little strange.
Well, I'm in there 3 times. What do you want?
Yeah, but we can't see you 3 times.
That's because there's only one camera.
Yeah.
He's got 2
So-
cameras. I mean, if you give me several minutes, I can go grab 2 other webcams, get them going too.
That will look very strange. Hi, Pete.
Okay. As I was mentioning, Peter, before you got in, we had a scheduling problem. The schedule I had set up disappeared. I had to set another one up and send out the emails for that. As you can see, things are pretty light. But also, too, I was mentioning just before you got in, a network issue I had was due to an old device in my network setup, and it was limiting my speed. So you got to watch for network bottlenecks. Okay, I'm gonna share, I think, my screen. At least I hope I'm going to. No, that one. This is the one I want. Okay. Now, our good old friend LibreOffice. One of the questions a lot of people have, I've noted, is that there are people who want to understand how can they take and basically function in a Linux world when they're only used to primarily Windows, or in a small case, they can also have the same situation with Apple products, Macs, OS as an example. So here's LibreOffice, and one of the tips I came up with, I forget how many years ago. I started off with, I think, version 4, seriously. And one of the issues that comes up with LibreOffice is the file format. If I have a Microsoft Office generated document, I can open it up with LibreOffice, no problem. If I try and modify it and save it, it outputs it in an old format in some cases, but in other cases, it will create a new file with the default version of file called OD, and I'm going to say asterisk because the third character is either a T for the word processing, P for presentation, X for the calc. And pardon me. if you bring up the general screen for LibreOffice, go to Tools, go to Options, come down here to Load and Save and expand it.
We can't see what you're showing.
Yeah.
It should be showing right now. It says
All we got is your desktop.
We're showing
With-
the frugal computer guy on it.
We're seeing your browser, not your whole desktop or
Right.
your other application.
Oh, okay. I'll have to stop sharing and try that again. It should have brought it up, but it didn't, apparently. And let's see if I can find it. There it is. Okay. All right.
That is your
There we
that
go.
is
Okay.
your application.
Now, Bob in Boston, unless they changed it years ago, wanted the government to generate all government-based documents in the OD asterisk formats. Now, this is an outgrowth out of Europe, particularly Germany. And I have nothing against the OD format, but for most people here in the United States, they want to be simpatico with Microsoft Office so that if they create a document that it puts it out in a Microsoft readable format so that when it's given to somebody who only has Microsoft Office, they can read it, they can modify it, do whatever. So it gets down into this document type line. Right now, I'm and the following line. It says text document. Always save as, and I selected from this list Word 2007-365 docx. Yeah.
Are we supposed to be seeing something different? Because we're not.
All we see is the your pointer moving around on a blank screen.
I don't know why it's doing that. It should be showing you what I'm in there. Do you see the text drop down?
No.
What the heck's going on?
Can you make the screen smaller, maybe?
You won't see any drop downs or any menus as long as you're sharing an app window in Zoom. Only if you share your whole desktop and try to maximize the application as much as you can.
I haven't run it.
I've had the same problem.
Well, I originally was sharing the desktop.
Yeah, let's try the whole desktop.
And
But
maybe, is there a way not to be full screen on your desktop?
There's all kinds of ways of doing anything and everything.
okay, now you've got the LibreOffice and something in front of it.
Yeah.
Well, this is your, like I said, tools. You go to, well, let me close this first. See if I can get this thing to work. Tools, options, under load and save, expand it so you can see general. And general, down here in the bottom section, it says text document as the first item. Then I have always save as. Now, do you see that menu?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I select this one here, Word 2007-365 docx. And normally it defaults to ODF text document, and it will have an extension of .odt, which I don't know if Bob's having to use that or not, but if he goes to the government sites, that's supposedly what it would be in. If I come back to this line here to text document, drop down, I change it to spreadsheet. again, I can select Excel 2007-365. It defaults to XLSX versus .ods as in Sam. And then I drop it down again. I do presentation, and I again have selected the PowerPoint 2007-365. So I'm in this mode all the time. So if I decide to create something, it's an automatic that it's going to be Microsoft Office compatible. If I were to want, if I had to send to Bob, as an example, living in the Boston area or in Massachusetts, and he wanted and needed it in ODT format, then I would have to save it in the ODT format for him and then send it off to him. So this is one of the key things that a lot of people don't know, and they don't explore their software enough to find out, or go out on Google or other search engines and ask an appropriate question to get some answers. So that's why at the moment I am bringing this piece up ahead of time. Now I'm going to see if I can switch again. Okay, now this was, do you see my browser?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank goodness for something. Okay, I stumbled across this because I wanted to learn something new that I haven't explored in LibreOffice. And I stumbled across this guy. This is a little bit outdated information-wise, but trust me, 80% or more of everything I've gone over so far in this guy's videos is on the mark, and it's as usable today as it was when he created it. And he was back on Ubuntu 14.04. And so this is a neat little site. I'll give you the address here. I'll see if I can put that in the chat, if it'll let me. Oh, wait a minute now. Yeah, hang on 1 minute. Okay. No, you ain't gonna let me. Since I'm in screen share, I'll have to do that later. Remind me. I'll send you the link. At any rate, this here looks strange. It says from XP to Linux. And honest to God, this gives you a lot of the basics. And this is perfect for you, Dennis, in particular. Even Wayne, you might pick up some tips there. But he's got a command line in here. Vim is a text editor. I still consider that pretty old school. I used to use it a long time ago. I now use Nano, that's built right into Linux, as my text editor for modifying files. LibreOffice Impress, that's the equivalent of PowerPoint. LibreOffice Base is kind of like Access database in Office, but the big thing between Office and LibreOffice or any of the other similar packages, you cannot have macros transfer from one platform to the other. So Microsoft's macros will not run here. You have to recreate them in this environment. So you have to understand that. I haven't gotten into Portable App to see what he has there. Draw is a graphics program for free-base drawing, but it also acts as a PDF reader and allows limited uh, editing modifications to PDF documents. Stellarium, this is neat. I didn't know what it was. I've seen the name Stellarium before, but it didn't ring any bells with me. So I looked at his. This is if you're a star watcher and you love watching stars, he's got 3 videos on this one program alone. My recommendation on any of these is to click the full view of the category. That way you can select what ones you want to run rather than it always opening up the first video in the group and it starts to play it. Then you have the LibreOffice Writer. Thunderbird. He's only got one for Thunderbird, and this is got to be pretty out of date, but at the same time, too, a lot of technology is new things added on top of the old things. And so a lot of computer stuff, I can go back into the first 10 years of this century. And I guarantee you a lot of the various programs, commands, and options and so forth are as true today as they were when those were first released. So you might get something out of that if you like using Thunderbird. Here's a spreadsheet tutorial. How this differs from the some of the other stuff, I'm not sure yet. I didn't get into that one yet. It's one of those I need to get into. Paint. I know a little bit about Paint, not enough to be dangerous yet. Paint is a college student's idea, just like Linux is, whereby they were using Photoshop by Adobe. And they saw the price tag. And you can't stay a student all the time. So bottom line is he created paint.net. And so it will give you a lot of the capabilities of a Photoshop. It's not the whole package by any stretch of the imagination. It's probably easier to learn to use than GIMP, which is closer to Photoshop in capability. But they all have to have differences, otherwise there's lawsuits and all kinds of legal wrangling going on. So there's that. Then he's got a couple down here for TrueCrypt, which is encrypting files and folders, especially if you're going to put it's sensitive information. You want to keep prying eyes from it, and especially if you put it up on a cloud account, you might want that encrypted so that anybody who comes across it hopefully will not have enough knowledge to break into it. Windows 7 backup and restore. I never was interested in the backup program out of Windows, so I certainly am not interested in that. Easy to use system backup and file backup restore options. I used that for a while, but I decided I liked Macro and Reflect better. Then you have the sync back. A lot of operating systems have some form of sync, especially for the browsers. This sync back can be used to keep track of all your changes and put a copy on a different computer, or NAS, N-A-S. And this way you have more immediate backup. Myself, I only do system backups. That means I take only full images, and I may not be able to get individual files and folders back. That doesn't bother me by and large, but for some people it does. And so you have to either, in many cases, buy a license package to do incremental or differential backups. And syncing is a way of doing it without having to do either buy a license and do incremental or differential backups, but have the same results. Incremental backups, let's say that you only do a full image backup once a month, every 30 days roughly. Okay, on day 19, your system gets all hosed up, craps out, or the hard drive dies. Okay, it's the end of the world for that drive. But if the drive is kaput, you have to replace it first. And then you have the ability to restore that last full backup. If you're doing incrementals, every day you're doing an incremental at the end of the day at least. And it takes a snapshot of all the files that have changed since the last backup was done, whether it's a full backup or an incremental backup. So they're little bits and pieces. They're very small files, but on day 19, I should have at least 18 incremental backups along with the last full image backup. When I restore the full image backup, I then, in date order sequence, have to also restore the incremental backups one at a time. A differential backup creates one cumulative backup file that keeps growing in size. So I would have one file for 18 days of backup of changes since that last full backup, and restore the full image backup, followed by restoring the differential backup one file. That's two files, and I'm back to the beginning of the 19th day where the failure occurred. So that's important. These are real interesting videos. I'm going to come over to this XP one. I hope you're able to see these. We're going to give it a shot. Okay, I don't hear sound, so I'm going to pause this for a minute. I think there was a trick to that. I'm trying to remember what it was.
There's a setting to share computer audio and share computer video in Zoom.
Yeah, all I got to do is find it.
I think it's under share, but
Yeah.
it might be under settings.
Look under settings.
That's not the problem. The problem has to do with the fact that I'm compressed right at the moment. It's not. No, I don't want that either. Hang on a minute. See, it's hiding a lot of my controls on this screen. trying to figure out where the controls for this are at. Hang on, maybe I got it. No, I don't hear the sound. Yeah, more fun. We don't do this enough, and that's part of the problem. Ah, here's where they're hiding. Um, I just there. I think I found it. I hope I did.
In this tutorial series, we're going to look at running Linux to replace or run on the same computer as Windows XP. When I talk about Linux to someone who has never seen it, the first question they ask me is, what is Linux? And the answer is, it's an operating system, just like Windows or Mac OS. And we're looking at one version right here. This version is called Ubuntu Mate, and I'm running this from a live distro, meaning it's not installed on my computer hard drive. When I'm done testing this out, if I like it, I can install this version of Linux on my computer by pressing this button right here. I don't want to install this version of Linux, and we'll look at how to create a live CD in a future tutorial. In this tutorial, I want to look at a couple different versions of Linux and give you an idea of what Linux is, and that the average person will be able to use it for most of their computer needs, and how the same operating system can look very different based on the desktop you're using. What most people are going to use their computer for is to get to the internet. In Ubuntu Mate, you can get to that by clicking on the Firefox symbol right here. This will open up the Firefox web browser. I can type in the URL right here, or search on something by clicking in here. If we go down to this lower right-hand corner, we see Workspace 2, Workspace 3, and Workspace 4. Some people call these virtual desktops. If I click onto the second workspace, we have a blank screen. Clicking back to the first shows us our browser. I'm clicking on the second workspace. I'm going up to Applications, Accessories, and I'm clicking on this thing called Calculator. This is a simple calculator program. Going down to the third workspace, I'm going to open up under Office, LibreOffice Calc. This is very similar to Microsoft Excel. And if you're not familiar with how to use LibreOffice Calc, Writer, Draw, or the LibreOffice base programs, I've got a lot of tutorials out there. You can find more information about them on the Frugal Computer Guy website or the Frugal Computer Guy YouTube channel. Let's go down to the fourth workspace, and I'm going to go back to Applications and look under Sound and Video, because here's some more things that people would use their computer for. Playing music or listening to CDs, Linux has something called Rhythmbox. This is similar to iTunes. If you want to make a custom CD or copy a CD, use Brezero. And to play movies, we've got the VLC Media Player. Going under System Tools, I see something called Caja. When I go up to Places, we have Home Folder. I'm going to click on that. And we see this is the same thing we have with Windows File Explorer. We've got our desktop, documents, downloads. I'm going into Help, About, and we see that Caja is the same thing as our Windows File Explorer. If we're looking for a particular program that might not be included in this version, I can go into System, Administration, and down at the bottom we have something called the Ubuntu Software Center. A lot of people say all the programs for Linux are free. We can see right down here, this one's $3.95, this one's $2.99, this one's $2.99. So not all the programs are free, but there are many, many programs out there that can be downloaded for no cost. I'm going to close this, and let's take a look at a different version of Linux. This version of Linux is called Kubuntu, which means it's the Ubuntu operating system with the KDE Desktop. I want to do the same thing with this version of Linux that we did with Ubuntu Mate. So the first thing I need to do is set up the 4 workspaces. To do that, I'm coming down to these colored balls, and I want to add a widget. The widget's name is Pager. Double-clicking that, and I can drag it down to my taskbar. On this first desktop, I'm going to open up the web browser, just like we did for Ubuntu Mate. We can see a little bouncing ball under the cursor. The KDE Desktop has a few extra features like that, but they do come at a cost. They do require a little more processing time, which means your CPU has to work a little harder, and there's more programs included with the KDE Desktop, which takes up more disk space. So you might not want to use the KDE Desktop on an older computer. Going down to the next virtual desktop or workspace, I'm going to open up the calculator program. I don't know what that's called here, so I'm going to just type in CALC, and it shows me KCalc. And there's my calculator program. On the third workspace, we opened up LibreOffice Calc, so I'm going into Applications, Office, and to get back to all applications, I can click right up here. Office, and I want Spreadsheet. Coming down to the fourth workspace or virtual desktop, I'm going back into Applications, and then in the multimedia, for the audio player, they have something called Amarok here. That's that iTunes equivalent. For creating CDs, they've got a program called K3B. And then to play your videos, they've got a program called Dragon Player. So we see there's different versions of software on the different desktops. Although they're using the same LibreOffice, the audio player is different, the disk burner is different, and the video player is different. For the file system, I'm going to open up the file manager. Going into Control, and down under Help, About Dolphin, we see that this one's called Dolphin, whereas Ubuntu Mate used Caja. So they're a little different. But we see the same things. We see the desktop, my documents, my downloads. And then to add in some software, we want to go to the equivalent of an app store. Under Computer, we see something called the Muon Discover, or the Software Center. And here I can type in what I'm looking for, but it's also categorized. You can go into Games, Graphics, or any of the categories down here. There's one more version of Linux I'd like to look at, and that is the standard Ubuntu operating system. This is the Ubuntu 14.04 LTS with the Unity Desktop. This is the version you will see if you download Ubuntu from their website or you get Ubuntu 14.04 from a magazine. 14.04 is just a release number, just like Windows 7, Windows 8, or Windows 10. If you're not using 14.04, your screen will probably look different than this one. I like the way Ubuntu renumbers their system because they use the year and the month. So 14.04 was released in April 2014. The LTS stands for long-term release, meaning this program will be supported for a long time, usually 3 or 4 years. I prefer to stay on a single release for 3 or 4 years. Then when a fresh LTS comes along, I do a complete reinstall with the new LTS. This helps me clear out my old junk files and programs I never really used or need, but never got around to deleting. It's similar to the thing I did with Windows, only this time I don't have to buy a whole new computer. In the last 2 versions of Linux, we have the workspace or virtual desktops. Let's turn them on here as well. I'm going to right-click, change desktop background. I'm going to click on the Behavior tab, and they've got a little checkbox, Enable Workspaces. There we see it right down here. Let's close this. We see we're working in the upper left-hand corner. To open up the web browser, I'm going to click on the Firefox icon. And we see that Ubuntu with the Unity Desktop has our most used programs over here on the left-hand side.
I'm cool.
Window. We opened up the spreadsheet program. And then we went down to our 4th workspace. And here's where we talked about the multimedia. So let's go back into our Ubuntu search and clear this out. Here we see the videos has a video player. Rhythmbox is the iTunes-like program. And for a CD burner, I don't see one. Let's type in CD. We see we've got Brasero Disk Burner. Photos. We should have some kind of photo manager. Typing photos in here, we see we've got Shotwell Photo Manager. And then to close that, the last thing we had was the Ubuntu Software Center. That's right down here. And this looks like the same we've already seen. We'll see that the window close properties are on the left-hand side of the window instead of the right-hand for Ubuntu with the Unity Desktop. A lot of these things are customizable, so depending on what operating system and what desktop you're using, you'll have a totally different user experience. I hope in this video I was able to show you that Linux can be a viable alternative for the average computer user to replace their non-supported Windows XP operating system. In the next video, we're going to talk about why we call these operating systems Linux, as well as look at how you might decide on what distro is best for you.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, now the reason why I also like this guy, unlike a lot of the other videos that are out there, first off, he doesn't have a strong accent, and I can clearly understand him. A few others I was looking for, they had strong foreign accents, and it was very difficult understanding what they were talking about. Second, some of the people who make these videos, they create long runtime videos up to a couple hours long, and that's not a regular meeting. This is just an instructional video. This guy here breaks it up into lots of small segments, so I can get one now. I can get one later on when I got a little time, like this. And this is a pick on a distro. So it's a kind of a great resource. I do wish it was a little more up to date than what it is, But whether this guy's even alive today, who knows? If he was back on 1404, he probably did these around 2014, 2015, maybe as late as 2016. So they are a bit out of date, but everything he's bringing up so far I can do today. And if the current programs are up to date, I may have additional things I can do on my computers that are not part of his video. I just have to figure out what they are or find another, I'm going to call it a resource. Same to you. 1 second here. I'm trying a little experiment while that video is going. Can you hear me? Good. Okay. Oh, that's another thing I got to do.
Echo.
I'm trying everything. Okay. Yeah, there's still a little echo. Okay. There, I think I got rid of the echo. I hope. Okay. Now, what did I do? Hang on just for a second. I'm going to get out of this share that I'm in now. Okay. And I'm going to see what I can do here. Okay. Now, are you able to see the screen? Hello.
Yes.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Offhand, I just brought up a fourth computer. It's a laptop. It's actually a Chromebook, but I got a lot of obsolete Chromebooks, and I recently converted several to run Linux as the only OS. And this is running Gallium OS on a Chromebook that's only got 2 gigs of memory. This is a 2-core Celeron processor. I can get a lot done on it, but it's not great. It would be better if it was a Pentium processor, a Core i3, or a Core i5. If you got a Chromebook that's still getting updates, leave it alone. But if you got old ones like I've got, you might be able to get some real use out of them by converting them over to Linux. Generally speaking, this is pretty neat. this is one other thing besides the videos and LibreOffice that I was bringing up. From a standpoint of getting old hardware to work in a modern environment. But there is one little gotcha, and it's not related to a Chromebook and running Linux on it. It has to do with how I use a laptop. Now, on the desktops that I'm on here right now with, those are running with an external mouse, whether it's wired or wireless, doesn't matter. On laptops, I always use the touchpad unless I'm having a problem with the touchpad, whether it's a driver issue or some hardware component failure, whatever the case may be. It is a big issue. And why I say that is simply because on a normal touchpad, the normal is to scroll, you go from the top edge of the touchpad towards the bottom to do your scrolling down a scrollable page. I don't like that. It seems to bother me with both sensitivity, touch, and stuff like that. So what I do is I reverse it, and it's called an Australian scroll, or some also call it Australian crawl. And basically, I just, in this one here, I go into mouse and touchpad, and it has a reverse scroll here. But on at least the Chromebooks or on Gallium itself, it doesn't work. I had to find an alternative way of doing it. That's not for this meeting. I'm just making you aware of it. This uses something called a Cypress trackpad, which is an oddball. There's also Elin trackpad versus Synaptics trackpad, which is the most common. But I can also, within here, adjust my sensitivity, whether I'm right-handed or left-handed. I can go into behaviors and do adjustments here for how fast or how slow I want things to occur, and also themes for primarily the pointers, how I can change it. But in here, there is also a in some of the Linux distros, the ability to disable the touchpad or trackpad when you are typing, but it only applies while you're typing, because a lot of times if you're properly typing with both hands like I do, you have a situation where one of your thumbs will touch ever so slightly the trackpad, and it causes a big mess. To avoid it, you can activate the feature to disable while you are typing the trackpad, and no matter how much you touch it, for a short period of time, it will be ignored. Then, without any further typing, I think the default is 2 seconds on mine. After 2 seconds, the touchpad becomes sensitive again, and if you touch it, you will move the cursor around just like normal. So I'm bringing this little item up mostly just to share it with you. I do play with lots of different versions of Linux. This Gallium isn't bad, but here's the my take on it, and I don't have facts to back it up. Unlike all the other distros, they're generic. they seem to work on anything if you got sufficient horsepower and memory in your system. On gallium, you have to choose the right version based upon the processor. Now, on Chromebooks that you convert, they got to all be Intel based. They don't work with ARM. However, with the Intel base, every generation of Intel processors has a code name. And this is what they go by in gallium, is the code name. Now, the machine I'm on right now has Haswell. That's around, I think, a fourth or fifth generation processor. Whereas I've got a Bay Trail on another one. I have Ivy Bridge on another that's very old. But this gives me a great little Linux-only desktop that I can use pretty much anywhere I want to. So I thought I would bring this up. I get into a lot of things for upcoming months. I've got a few things in the planning works, but it depends upon my time as to what I'm going to be able to get to in the future months. I'm also looking for ideas from you guys as to what can be discussed in future meetings. But I'm also quite interested in some of you starting to take and do small presentation. It could be a 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute presentation. If you want to do the whole meeting kind of presentation, that's fine as too. If you got ideas, you don't have to wait for the next meeting or even the tail end of this meeting to bring things up. I expect you to, if necessary, email me. And with some of your ideas, we may have to bounce some of the ideas around as to what gets covered and what doesn't get covered. I just felt that it was necessary to bring this up. But that reminds me, you guys didn't remind me about hang loose for a minute here. There we go on that. Now, I'm trying to get it so I can in the chat. One little problem with multiple computers like this is trying to get everything to work right, especially when you're playing with multiple mice. Oh, that part worked. Ah, I got you finally. Come on. Okay. I sent out in the chat, finally, a link to the videos that I started showing you earlier by the frugal computer guy. And if you get a copy of that link, you can go to that YouTube channel and see his content and take advantage of it. And I'm serious when I say find time here and there, because he takes every category and he breaks it up into lots of small videos. And I haven't seen one even approach 15 minutes. So they've all been under 15 minutes. And if you can pick up one now and then, that you can start learning a lot more features. LibreOffice as an office suite is one of the best ones out there, and it's cross-platform. It works on all the platforms that I know of. And so the end result is this gives you a tool and a good way of learning how to use each of the tools within the suite so that you can maximize that particular job application. Now, from there, you have to get into things like maybe VLC. I use that on some of my computers. Right now, I got an issue that I haven't had time to mess with on Windows 11. They created a new video player that seems to not want to allow VLC to run. So I might have to uninstall VLC and reinstall it to get it working when I both find the time and remember to do it. But every now and then I try and use VLC, find out I can't use that. I got to use the Microsoft player, and it works fine. It just doesn't have the flexibility I don't think VLC has, or Reputation. There's lots of other ones, and I'm not into everything. I'm mostly into hardware, the operating system, and utilities. And that's one of my projects that's coming up. I've got a utility that I'm trying to figure out right now that many of you may end up needing to have in the not too distant future. And so I'm working to work on that. Dennis didn't like my original install video. I may have now the means of working up a new video a different way. All I got to do is not sleep anymore, not eat, just sit at the computer 24/7. Maybe I'll be able to get it done. And right now I've got just a little bit of time because we're in spring break with the Society's new web page project. But that starts back up, I think, next week. And so I've got to try and make hay while I can. And I've got another member that's having problems. He may have been hit by ransomware or a spoof of a ransomware. And I may have to go out to his place Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. And I don't want to, but I don't think I'm going to have a choice. So at the moment, I don't have much of anything else to speak of right now. So I'm opening the floor to questions and other topics that are on your minds for discussion.
Okay, I do have something about Ubuntu, as it was shown in the video. Ubuntu was shown with the Unity desktop environment.
Right.
And as many of us may know, Ubuntu presently no longer uses the Unity desktop environment. It's using a version of GNOME, which operates with Wayland. And this changes how things work and don't work. There is also a distro, which is independent of Canonical, that is called Ubuntu Unity. And it does use an updated Unity 8, now known as Lomiri, as its desktop environment. And it does not use Wayland. So there is a workaround. And it's a popular distro now.
Well, see, with Linux and computers in general, you have flexibility that most people never explore to begin with. They don't understand how flexible computers and the operating system, even the application software, quite often can be. So, and the bad part there is they don't want to break their system. That's understandable. But think of when you were a child. How did you learn? Did somebody give you a pill, a vaccine injection? No. You learned by trial and error. And sometimes that broke things. Sometimes it doesn't break things, but you get an owie out of it. Whatever the case may be, it's a learning process. You have to learn to shift gears from an adult back to a kid and become an explorer to find out some of the things that are available. The other option, and it's in conjunction with that mindset, is using search engines to ask proper questions and find out through research what might be a solution to a problem you're having. That's how I learned alternate ways of getting that reverse scrolling on laptop trackpads. But it also goes to show you, and I want to bring this up from the video that I did show you, and part of what Bob just brought up. KDE Desktop is called a heavyweight. It's the closest you can probably get to acting just like Windows itself as a desktop, because Windows only has one desktop. Mac OS has only one desktop. Now, Bob brought up in Ubuntu that it got away from, for quite a while, Unity Desktop, which a lot of people didn't like. They went back to GNOME version 3, and I don't know if they went to 4 yet or not.
By 2204 will go to GNOME 4.
Okay. And the bottom line is GNOME and Cinnamon are considered middleweight desktops. In other words, they don't put the heavy load on your computer's CPU, memory, and other resources like the KDE type desktop. The Mate version is a GNOME desktop of version 2. A lot of people didn't like 3, and they may not like 4. I don't know yet on the latter. Version 2, a lot of people loved it, and they didn't want to give it up. So that's how they ended up with what's called the Mate version of Ubuntu's desktop. That's almost a middleweight itself, but slightly less than GNOME 3 and Cinnamon desktops. Then you start getting into real lightweight desktops like LXTQ, LXDE, XFCE, and there's a couple others. And then if you really got some antiques you're determined to do, you get into real tiny Linuxes that, hey, they're better than nothing. Tiny Core, Puppy Linux, quite a few different versions of that. Cinnamon, not Cinnamon, God, Peppermint. Peppermint. That's the one I was thinking of. That's another one. And there's several other real lightweights, but most are designed to be installed onto a desktop, a laptop, possibly a tablet as well. But the crux of it is one like Puppy doesn't install. You can, in fact, it's designed, and one of the tutorials there that was coming up number 2 or 3 under XP to Linux video would have brought up the fact that the Puppy Linux is designed not to be installed. It runs only from the flash drive, and it loads the whole operating system and your applications into core memory and runs from there. So essentially, once you boot up Puppy, you could take out the USB drive and keep right on going. So there's a lot of variety, but you got to get your feet wet first to where you feel very comfortable with what you're doing. Wayne, I think you're coming along pretty good from what I have seen so far. Peter, I don't know on you. Dennis, you haven't even gotten out of the starting blocks. So until you do, you've got to have the hands-on experience. Learning for human beings is by the rote methodology. And this is one of the problems I always noticed in our in-person meetings, but it applies to Zoom as well. People, for the most part, if they listen to what's going on in the presentation, that's fine. Few, if any, take any notes of what's going on in the meeting. At least with Zoom, if somebody recorded it, you might be able to replay the video as much as you want to keep hammering home what you're trying to learn. But the key in in-person meetings is to go home and start practicing using it right away before you start forgetting too much of it. Well, most people, if they even remembered it by the next day after they get their day really going and get on a computer, would be lucky to remember half of whatever they learn, making it a struggle, and or they will simply give up on it. And that's mostly their own fault. They didn't have notes. They didn't sit down try and exercise at least bringing up the application or installing it if they had to, and start examining the options that are available in the program so that they can then, by the next day, start repeating it again and again. It varies person to person how many times you have to repeat things. But there's a axiom for sales and marketing people. You must put the information before the people 7 or more times before they really start remembering it. And you're not going to get away from that. So you got to think of it, what you're getting out of an in-person meeting or a Zoom meeting, you've got to have repetition. Well, unless you can get your hands on the video and keep playing that over and over and over again, you've got to exercise this on your own computer at home and as quickly as you can. Not doing that causes problems. This includes passwords. A lot of people, they create maybe a decent password. I'm not saying a great password, a decent one. But they tend to forget it the longer they are away from it. And it takes several times using it before you really start remembering what it is, assuming you are trying to remember all your passwords, in which case you're doing a disservice to yourself and to others because you're probably using too few passwords. Every account I've got is in a password manager. They're all different on all the accounts. And that gives safety. If somebody breaks into one of my online accounts, they can use that one account against me and others that use the same account, but they cannot break into my other accounts that easily by having repeated the same password over and over again. Most people only use 2 or 3 passwords at most for everything. That means all they got to do is crack into one of them and they'll start exploring, trying to find other accounts you've got and try out that password they figured out. And odds are they're going to get into a quarter to a third of all your online accounts. So you got to use your head. If you can't remember them all, and I don't even try and remember them all, I do remember the ones I use the most. And that includes some very difficult ones that are up to 16 characters long. I don't have a problem because I keep exercising that knowledge over and over again. And that's the one thing I'm trying to bring up with this video source that I brought up. Yes, it's older information, but a lot of this stuff doesn't change. And you have to understand that. And the fact that most of the information that we do on the computers might go back 20 years and it still works today. It may not be the most desirable way of doing the job because it might be command line based, but and we would prefer to use a GUI whenever possible. One of the jobs that I've got on my list of things to try and show you guys in the future meeting is a command line program. But I'm not looking forward to the command line. I found there's a GUI for it. So I can use the command line program with a GUI front end and get the best of both worlds. And it's easier to use for not only me, but everybody else that wants to use the same utility. So this is the kind of stuff I'm trying to do, but I also need some of you guys to participate more in both ideas of what you're looking for, and if you can start doing even a small presentation to wake up other people to something you like using on a Linux-based system, that's what we need to know. Same with just, I showed you that I had the laptop there that was a Chromebook. It's now a Linux computer. It's very lightweight. The battery will last a long time because it's a 2-core Celeron processor, low speed, relatively speaking, and only has 2 gigs of memory. But I can get quite a bit done on it. I can do browsing on the web browser. I can run LibreOffice. I can do my emails because they're all online. But I could probably run Thunderbird if I wanted to. So these are the things that have to be done. But it's real rough when it's only one person trying to do this. The Central Florida Computer Society's Linux SIG, they've dissolved. They just weren't getting enough people to attend. This one shrunk a lot. I'm not sure what's going to bring them back. I don't know what why some of them dropped out that were pretty steady even last year. It's like January was a death knell with a new year, and we've lost quite a bit of attention. Whether we'll gain any of these people back partly depends upon you guys. Bob has been a help because he used to be part of CCS in Chicago area. He attended a lot of the in-person meetings, but bottom line, he's busy too, and he's heavy into Linux. Neither one of us is a master of Linux. There aren't too many of them around, I don't think. So it's a case where if we can't answer the question right away, odds are we'll come up with an answer, and that can be passed on in an email or the next meeting. But I gotta have more of you stepping up to the plate. Even on Raspberry Pi, I've got Raspberry Pis, but I haven't played one in a long time. And the way things are going right now, I'm not sure the next time I'll pick up a Raspberry Pi. But the other thing with Raspberry Pis, I've got an article that's going to be published for Monday of this week. With luck, it'll get out tonight before I go to bed. But you guys wouldn't see it if you get my more FYI email mailings from Beata until tomorrow. And one of those brings up Linux and Raspberry Pis as a big security risk. All the passwords are known. People, instead of making their own unique passwords and strong enough passwords, they're using whatever the default password is, and that becomes a back door into their network and all the other computing devices they have on their network. So you're cutting your own throat if you don't change passwords. People buy nanny cams and security cameras. Whatever password was in the instructions to get it set up and working, they leave it. They don't change it. And they wonder why they appear on a lot of Russian porn sites, especially those that go running around their house thinking that, hey, this is my private domain, etc. But their cameras are on and being hacked by Russian operators, and they'll sell that video on porn sites. Sorry, your own stupidity. And if it's a nanny cam, there's pictures of the kids, and sometimes these idiots are talking to your kids, whether you know it or not. You got to use your head with computing devices. They can be a great tool, and they can be a nightmare when it comes to security. And right now, with a Russia-Ukraine issue, besides what North Korea, Iran, and China have been doing, along with Russian hackers or sanctioned hackers, things are getting worse, not better, folks, when it comes to security. And those people who don't use their head, they make life more miserable for the rest of us. Anybody got any comments?
Well, I've got a question about my Wi-Fi on my Linux machine. It's only good for 2.4, and I was thinking I'd like to change it out so I could use the 5 gigahertz.
Okay, what kind of machine is it again?
It's an HP.
It's a which?
It's Pavilion DM4. I've looked up. I've actually opened up the back and looked at the. It's a I think BCM little chip.
Well, is this a laptop that you're talking about?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Hang on. I don't know if I've got one right here or not. Hang on a minute.
Hey, Bert, while Tim is looking that up, let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
Do you have a Linux system right now or no?
No. I used to do some Raspberry Pi stuff a little bit.
Are you thinking about trying to bring up one of your old machines on Linux?
Okay.
Generally, I'm just a Windows Microsoft person.
Pardon?
Generally, I'm a Windows
Oh.
Microsoft person,
Yeah.
and I've got 9 machines doing that. Keeping those up is keeping me busy.
Yeah, well, try all my machines and multiple operating systems. Uh, okay, I'm going to show you three different Wi-Fi cards. One of
Well, this
them
is a
is,
it's a Broadcom. You want to really?
don't worry about that part. Trust me, don't worry about that part. This here, can you
We
see
can't
it?
see your screen.
Your camera's not on to us.
Did I? Hang on. Oh, wrong mouse. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I had that off. Okay, anyway, here's a card. This is an old style card. It's called a full height Wi-Fi card for portable devices, primarily laptops. That been out of favor for a few million years, maybe something like that. Turn it now. This is the same thing, but this is a half height card. This is most likely what's in yours,
Yeah,
unless
that
it's a newer
looks
one.
like the size that's in mine.
Yeah, okay. And the third type is in some of the newer equipment, and I have a few systems with that, and it changed a little bit. It's now narrower and a tad taller. So this is the new one. Now, this one and the first one I showed you, they have 2 or 3 wire for an antenna. But there are some computers that will only use 1 wire for an antenna. That means it's got to be a pretty good signal for you to get it. This one here uses the same kind of connector, but they're even smaller than the other 2 cards, and they are a nightmare to get your antenna connections snapped on, because that's what they do. They snap on and snap off. You'll either have 1 or 2 screws holding in the Wi-Fi card. Like so many things in our life, including computers and cars, lots of parts are generic and interchangeable. This little sucker here, I have that in almost all my laptops. There are 2 models, and they cost usually less than $15 to get a new one. And I get them off of eBay. But generally speaking, a 7260 or a 7265, those are the ID numbers, are what you're looking for. And they are AC class cards. So they will give you 2.4, 11 channels. They'll give you 5, the original low end channels, and all the mid channels. Though what they will not give you is what Wi-Fi 6 and 6E give you extra on the high end. That takes a new card. But 7260 and 7265, I would go with the 65 over the 60. And generally speaking, you just take out the 1 or 2 screws in the existing card. It'll when both screws are out, it'll hinge up all by itself with no help. And then you just pull it out of its socket. It's gentle. It's easy to do. And once you got the card out, you have to snap off the snap-on connectors for each antenna, do them one at a time, and put them on the corresponding clips on the new card. And then you shove the new card back into the slot, press it down, put in 1 or 2 screws. That's it. Now, when you come up, it may or may not work. If it doesn't work, you want to be able to hook up to Ethernet if you can. If you don't have Ethernet in that computer, that's when you have to have a adapter. I think I've
I've
shown.
got Ethernet. I've got an Ethernet adapter on this.
Okay.
A plug. So
Well, newer stuff doesn't have it. Newer
yeah,
stuff to get the thin
yeah,
size, they don't have it. I have an adapter. It plugs into a USB port, and you hook the Ethernet cable to it. All you're wanting to be able to do is get the internet again. It'll figure out the driver that's needed, download it into your computer, and all of a sudden your Wi-Fi will start working.
yeah.
If you're lucky, the existing driver will be good enough that it'll get yours up and running right away, and it'll you can then do a go into the device manager in Linux in the Mint and see if it can find a new driver, and it might find a better driver. But
Yeah.
with
Is there any way to use Bluetooth in doing this sort of stuff?
I haven't explored that much. There are Bluetooth is getting better and better. These new cards, the 7260, 265, both have Bluetooth in them. So if your computer does not support Bluetooth now, getting the new card, you will have Bluetooth. It will need a driver for the Bluetooth, but it's only most modern Bluetooth and its proper driver that will give you additional features because it's short range communications. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are in a certain sense the same. They're both radio transceivers, but one's got a range of about 30 feet. The other one's got 330 foot range at 2.4 and somewhere around a half to 2/3 that distance for 5 gigahertz. So
Well, do some routers have Bluetooth built in already?
some of the modern ones might. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know. I haven't seen one of them, but I haven't shopped for a new router in a long time. I don't know. There are some systems I do know they can do kind of the equivalent of Wi-Fi through the Bluetooth, but it has to be a pretty modern Bluetooth, modern driver, and you got to have the right applications that will recognize Bluetooth in place of Wi-Fi. So there's no simple answer to your question. That's one of the problems, especially with computers. Uh, there's a jillion answers for every problem, and they're not all that easy. You got to go from very old school command line type stuff that can drive a lot of people to drink heavily, and all the way to very simple ways of getting the job done with very little effort and little memory required to remember how to do it. Bottom line is, I may know 1 or 2 or 3 ways of getting it done out of 10 or more different ways of getting the same thing accomplished. I'm finding as I do various research, new ways of doing the same old thing. Some of them I don't like because they're more archaic, and some of the ways are better than what I've been using possibly for years. This is the life of computers. You just have to accept it. Things are constantly changing. There's a lot of people, they want as easy a way of doing whatever it is they do on their computers as possible, with as little trouble and with as little memory required. That's why a lot of them have such lousy passwords and only using a few passwords for everything, which is as dumb as you can get. But that's they think there's not going to be a rainy day in their future because of what they did. Sanford's not a dummy. Sanford has had a problem with somebody getting enough of his information. They tried to do some financial loans. Fortunately, the financial institutions saw a red flag, stopped it, checked with him, found out it wasn't him, and shut down whatever was happening. Hopefully, they turned it over to law enforcement, and maybe they can track down the person who tried to commit fraud. But a lot of people don't have that much luck. A lot of them end up being put on the hook for a lot of money, and until they go through court and prove it was not them that got the benefit of the money or purchase of goods, etc., they're on the hook for it, and it could cost them $100,000 or more to get off that hook. Now, I hope you got deep pockets, because otherwise, that's going to follow you the rest of your life. So if you're a young person and you ain't got that kind of money laying around, there's a high chance that you'll never get that fraudulent transaction off your record. And anytime you want to buy a house, a car, even renting property, most renters will check out your credit history. They see that on your credit record, they're going to say, go live on the street. I guarantee it, because I've got some relatives that own property that they rent out, and they check everybody. So I'm just giving you a word of advice. If you got to learn to use a password manager, there's lots of them out there. I've been using one for well over a decade, and it serves me real well. And so far, I've absolutely had no compromised accounts that I know of. I've had one fairly recently where somebody tried breaking in from the Arab Emirates. And all I did was go in myself, not through any message I got through email. I went in to my password manager. I changed the password, logged back into that account with the new password. Everything's fine. So if somebody really was trying to hack my one of my accounts, they're going to have to figure it out all over again.
I get an email every day from somebody that's supposed to be from Microsoft and says somebody's been browsing on your whatever. And every day it lists a different web browser. And it all says it's coming from Russia, but it isn't. It's just somebody trying different things. Are you on this browser? Are you on that browser? Are you on that browser? And each day they send a different one. And of course I delete them, but it's interesting. Somebody gets an idea and they just keep trying different things.
Those are phishing messages, and a lot of people get hooked on them. And if you're crazy enough to mess with a lot of those phishing messages, sooner or later you're going to get that hook in to you, and you're going to get pulled out of the water and put in the frying pan. Yeah, it's your own fault. But that's a good example.
I get those McAfee things about your account's up or whatever. I haven't had McAfee for 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, McAfee, LifeLock, all those, they're all, even Facebook, they all have people trying to trap you into opening an email.
Yep.
Well, not only that, but I mean, I've had some that say that I've got checkout in an online store for some software that I happen to use. You got to understand when you're out on the internet, with rare exception, they are people at the other end or in between can see the information being interrogating your system. They know what kind of an operating system you got, the type of hardware you got, at least in general, and what kind of browser you're using and how old it is, whether you're up to date or are you several versions behind. That's where keeping software up to date is critical because a lot of these people are looking for the older stuff they know how to take advantage of and escalate privileges to take over your machine. So,
Apple, Amazon are also those kind of companies where somebody's trying to buy something on your account, or at least pretends to.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've had the Amazon too, quite a bit, but it's just a case where you got to understand with all the data breaches that have gone on, those data breaches aren't just trivial crap. It's a lot of the information those companies that you do business with are collecting on you, on your computer, your operating system, your browser, and other application software. And they get it into a database so they can do data analysis and figure out ways of getting you to do things. It's human engineering, it's called. And so, bottom line is, with a data breach, that information is now up for sale on the dark web. All you got to do is pay a tiny amount of money. We're talking like maybe $2 or $3 for a whole bunch of information, and they don't care what you do with that information. Uh, they got their money. Now you go do whatever you want to do with that information, and if you get caught, it's you that got caught, not me, the guy who did the data breach.
There's also IRS phishing type notices.
Oh,
The IRS right now is, very active in terms of trying to stop anybody who takes your refund before you do,
yes.
files a return to get your refund before you do. And that's an annual kind of thing. Of course, the IRS always puts out all kinds of notices just before April 15th so they can scare people into filing. But aside from that, there's also a scam going on, apparently, where people think they're buying a piece of property and they put down a down payment
Yep.
and goes nowhere.
Yep.
They lose that money. There's
Yep.
no way to get it. Sometimes there's also issues with Zelle, which
Yep.
I know people use, but they're sort of like an intermediary broker between bank accounts. And if it, and it's very hard for banks to then give you your money back.
Oh, they
'Cause it's
won't.
not.
Most of them will not give you a cent back because it's not insured. FDIC and SBC something or other, those don't cover those kind of transactions by Zelle or Venmo or some of the other applications. I think that even applies to PayPal.
And what about the crypto kind of stuff,
Well, that's even worse.
Bitcoin stuff?
There's absolutely nothing there. Today, you could have, say, one Bitcoin, and it might be worth $55,000. Tomorrow morning, it could be worth zip, nothing. So now, and there's no kind of backing at all. There's no real governments behind any of that stuff. It's kind of like if you want something, you give me so much of the cryptocurrency and I'll give you what you want. They then, in turn, may play kind of like a stock market investment and they move their cryptocurrency around. They do explore other cryptocurrencies in order to be able to catch the rising ones in value and divorce themselves of those that are stagnant or losing value. And that way they maintain some value and they keep on going that way. But it's if you remember right around the end of last century in the 1990s, you had the internet bubble, and then it burst one day. Well, that's potentially what can happen with cryptocurrencies. But even the United States government is now looking into it. The only country I know of offhand that's tied their actual money to a cryptocurrency is Peru. But I think El Salvador or one other country in that in Central America has been looking to do kind of the same thing. I know of at least one other person that has cryptocurrency to some extent. Personally, you got a better chance at going to one of the casinos anywhere in the world and come out a winner compared to playing around with cryptocurrencies as far as I'm concerned.
Pete, are people doing crypto in Hawaii?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
doing it all over. So with crypto, like any other gambling thing, you only invest what you are, just like you go to the casino. If you're smart, you're going there to play. You take X numbers of dollars and you put it in there, and that's what you're going to play with. And you're not going to play with any more. And if you come back out of there with more money than you came, you're very happy. And if you come back out of there with nothing, you're not to worry, because that was just your
Play money
amount that you were going to play with for that entertainment.
right. But at the same time too, that's not most of the players. Most of the players they gamble like crazy. This online betting now on sports and everything else going under the sun just makes it that much worse. And one of these days, we're either going to have a severe recession or possibly a 1930 style depression again. And watch what happens to a lot of these people who have been out of control on this stuff, because it is a big gamble. And there were a lot of suicides because of the stock market crash and depression. You could that could be a tip of the iceberg compared to the number that you could have if this bubble ever burst.
Of course, now they have you have lotteries in every state or all over the place,
Yeah,
so that the state gets the money as opposed to the gamblers or we'll say crime people
right.
taking that business.
That's correct. But at least some of that is supposed to be earmarked for good things like schools and other infrastructure projects. So it seems like too little of it's getting to where it's supposed to go by the original setup of these various lotteries that occur in so many darn states. It's not funny. Everybody's trying to make money, not working. That's about what it amounts to.
My son has several computers hooked up running all the time doing crypto mining.
Yes, and he's creating a lot of the pollution that's hurting the atmosphere.
And also running up a big electric bill.
Well, some of them cheat on that too and had to get electricity without being billed for it.
Well, if you got your full house on solar and you're mining from solar, that's a wash.
I personally, I think it's a squirrely proposition. graphic cards were going at a high premium because they're using them in an array of multiple graphic cards to do simple tasks and for crypto mining. And the cost of electricity, the cooling needed to keep those things running 24/7, all the electricity that's consumed, et cetera, et cetera. It's a nightmare, and in some countries have caught some of these people. Besides confiscating all their stuff, some of them are going to prison. Go ahead.
I signed up.
For cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I signed up a couple months. Hello?
Go
I
ahead.
signed up a couple months ago to this Kiplinger tax letter.
Mm.
It says in here, and I'll read it real quick. You can't use virtual currency to pay federal taxes that you owe the IRS, but people in Colorado will soon be able to use it for state tax payments and fees for state permits and licenses.
Not a surprise.
Yeah, they expect to get the program up and running by this summer. It also says this, the IRS treats virtual currency as property for federal income tax purposes.
Correct.
That means if you are using appreciated Bitcoin or another form of digital currency to pay taxes or other expenses, you'll have taxable gain to the extent of appreciation in the currency between the date you acquired it and the date you had actually spent it.
That's
Just
right.
like a stock.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
capital gains
Yeah.
tax.
But you got to know your basis for each item and to be able to figure that out. As a matter of fact, although they're not doing much with it this time for this 2021 return, there's a checkbox on there that asks if you have any crypto assets. Because in 2022, the next tax return, they will be requiring you to report it. You'll get 1099s, all kinds of stuff.
And 1099s
just
go
like
to
a
the
stock.
government. 1099s go to the government, and therefore they'll know whether you're properly reporting that information on your tax returns or not.